Lyman Wetlands and Water Courses Commission. It's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. We did have a request to move up tonight from whole business. The applicant can go to a different appointment. This is so number 4. It's sorry, number 3. Request for extension on permit 21-19 Grassy Hill replacement of bridge number 10405.
Put the file here.
Make a motion to amend his agenda for number 3 to become first on the agenda.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Introduction here.
So, thank you for listening. We're, as you know, we're moving ahead with the Grassy Hill Bridge replacement. The current permit, I think, expires in 2026. We're expecting to begin construction in June of 2026, and our town engineers, Nathan Jacobson, would like to have us extend the permit now so that we're not in the middle of a build and have to come for a request. It makes it easier for DOT and everybody else that if everything's in line now.
Eric, how long can we sign up for?
Up to 5 years. So you don't have to go the full 5 years now. You can come back if you want, but up to you how long you'd like to expect. You could extend up to 2000 and oh god, I'm sort of lose track of time here. 2031, I think, is the date here. So
And the conditions are basically the same as when we issued the permit.
yeah, if you have it while here, all the original conditions are in place. Nothing would change. All we're literally doing is just extending the final date on this from June 11th, 2026, June 11th, whatever year you want to pick within a 5-year period.
I'll make a motion to extend to the 5 years.
Second.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
All right, we go back to the end. So for new business, we have application 25-15, 240 Woodward Road, out of Christine Bond. Application to replace an existing pavilion.
I don't know that anybody's here for that. After what happened, this past, we printed out the wetlands map to confirm the really are wetlands on the site. They did not give us a map showing that they're replacing the gazebo or where that would be. So we're going to need them to amend the agenda to do that. That said, my recommendation is you set a site walk so you can at least go out and take a look and see what we're talking about. Situation hasn't shown up. We didn't do that before the meeting. So if you guys want to just figure out when to do a site walk, this is the only one you've got.
Anybody have any traffic plans or things that don't work? Got a way of doing sometime next week. When you have to keep care what day?
Not next week. I have no meetings next week, so you can do it any day you want.
Monday. Okay. I'll do.
Sorry? You see the third? Can we do it at 5? 5:30 possible? I have a meeting at 6, so that would make it 5.
So the next Tuesday,
That would be
June.
June 3rd. Okay, I will make sure the applicant gets notice. And again, this is the only new line we've got, so no, he just then rearray. We know we're going to get there at 5 o'clock, and that's pretty much it.
I'm pretty sure there's a pond that's not on the map for the land.
Okay, well, again, when we get there, we'll get a little better. So,
All right, so now old business, we have 25-11, 910 Hague Road, Perry Meltzer, application for pond maintenance and restoration.
okay, I've given, we have here both the new application and the original application rather, in case you want to take a look at that. And again, what happened last time is that they did not show up at this meeting. Last time you guys did not have prejudice. They are back in more or less for the same project, and I know Mr. Really in particular had some questions. So I don't know if there's, again, anything further you'd like to ask them, but I know they are intended to see. So back to you folks, it's your application. So when you come up and talk to that.
We hope you will approve our application. It's simply, Rich tagged it last October, and he said it's simply a restoration and no good alternative. It's removing sediment that's built up over, I think it's 12 years since the last came before the Wetlands Commission. And excess vegetation that is impeding the natural functioning flow of the pond.
I think Mike had the most questions about where the spoils were going.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to look at the new application that came in, but I had a couple of questions that related to how much material was going to be removed and where exactly it was going to be deposited, okay? And depending on how much you're removing would determine as to how deep it would be. That would be one question. The second question was, how would you control as you're doing the excavation in the pond? I'm not sure what this commission does, but usually they try to restrict excavation during a low flow period so that you're not dealing with storms and high flows, so to protect downstream property owners from sedimentation. And I recall, is there a pond immediately downstream or there was?
I think across the street there was.
Yeah, so, that potentially could be impacted by the erosion. So I'd just like to know what we were gonna do to minimize the downstream erosion during the excavation of the pond. And then, I was curious, and we should probably should have said this, but earlier, but I think I said it before. I'm curious as to how deep depending on where you're depositing the fill, it's on the other side, this would be the east side of the pond, where it may have been dumped before. I wanted the soil scientist to just indicate how much fill is over wetland fill now, because that determines whether or not it's still wetland. I think in the sketch I saw on the original, he said it was non-wetland. And it would have to be 20 inches deep to knock it out of the wetland category if there's still on it, but maybe that's the case. I just don't know. It was wet the day I was out there and I wasn't able to get out there on the 19th. Yeah. Most important though is controlling siltation as you're excavating down the stream, so you don't impact your downstream neighbors. Where's it going to go? How deep is it going to be? And that determines kind of how big your area is.
Richard talked about taking it only down to have a water level of 3 feet,
Right.
So that it keeps some of the vegetation down. And it's not going, we're not digging out the whole piece, just that upper, I don't know, like maybe a third, shown.
To your point of where it goes, Richard suggested putting on that higher wetland area that was shown on your map here. We could certainly put some on the other side. It would help with the flooding that comes out of the pond onto toward the stone wall.
There's water running out of it in like the summer when it gets dry.
There's water running out of.
Does that run out of the pond when it gets dry?
Yeah.
A little, I mean, it's getting to the point where if we don't do something, it's going to be a much bigger impact on the people downstream.
Anyway, it's a little bit becoming a meadow. When we first took possession, it was a pond, and now it's just. And Rich suggested, and as Ron said, we're open to, it doesn't be a beautiful, perfect pond. It just maybe would leave a chunk of the vegetation or some compromise there. It's, we just want that we want to put the bridge back where it was, that it was sunken in, which was causing the thing that we worked properly on is something that.
I
We
just think-
evidently have American ducks that appear to be walking on the water.
I just think we need a more accurate map because it's kind of a sketch now. And someone needs to, maybe you can probably talking to excavators, they can give you some guidance on how much material is going to come out. Is it 10 yards, 20 yards? It depends on the area that you tell them to excavate. And I don't have a good feel for how much, I know it's not the whole pond, but how much area you're excavating, and then you have enough room where you're proposing to put it. And then really the excavator needs to come up with some sort of how do you protect the downstream, property owners from erosion while you're, downstream flotation line? The pond, these are pretty standard questions.
But of course, I mean, obviously, we would not do it during the rainy season.
And you say not during the dry season either.
Yeah, but
Not
you
during
could,
the growing season, but the annual season change.
that's something that we may specify.
Yeah.
You know, but you could, even if we did it, let's say during August.
Yeah.
You could still get a hurricane during August, and
Well,
it's not predictable, but you would try to.
Yeah. Or September.
But
What,
there might be some measures that you would put in, at the downstream culvert before it leaves your property. To catch the silt, but we would just want to see what your contractor would propose. We don't expect you to design that.
Yeah.
We would expect your excavator to kind of come up with the
Yeah.
volume, where is it gonna go, how deep is it gonna be?
in your experience here, I mean, have you all found that there are excavators that you have worked with that understand the ethos and the guidelines that are people who are expert in doing this kind of work? That can answer these questions?
Yeah, I don't, just because I just moved here officially years ago, and I've only done this commission for a year. Plus, so, but some of the other members,
And I know Rich is the go-to guy and we would certainly have him come, Rich Starsky. He did flag everything last fall. He came out actually about a month before after we had him told him about 18 months. So we would really like to move it forward. And we're willing to do, if we have him come, that's fine. He didn't have necessarily an excavator to recommend, so we would just start doing our research on that. Looking toward, I know, August to do it.
yeah, I don't know what our commission has in policy, if they had recommended contractors to do various jobs. Generally, we probably don't want to put that right.
In a general rule, we don't recommend specific individuals because we don't want to be accused of favoritism
Yes.
or steering contracts in a particular direction. But I don't have a list of contractors for this purpose that I've given out in the past. We do have a list of engineers and surveyors, but it's got about 15 names on it. And again, we don't have any approval for excavating.
So do you have a hard date that you're looking to start, or are you just trying to get ducks in a row?
6 months ago.
Yeah, but we'd like to get the bridge raised and, right now is an active time for, wildlife. So, and we can certainly research. We can call Rick, but we can also call excavators and say, can you come take this material out to your point about, leading, so it's 3 feet deep. And then just.
Well, yeah, 3 feet deep at what time of year? So I'm a little reluctant to try to put conditions on your permit because I can't answer some of these questions that Mike is asking. So I think maybe the route we should take is have Mike say what his concerns are so that he can answer them, and then maybe we can decide as a commission to table this until next month.
Okay.
So Mike, do you want to go over what you're looking for?
I think we would need kind of a more accurate sketch of the pond, even if they, so long as it gives us the approximate size where you're gonna dredge.
And there's a scale on the.
Yeah, so they could probably blow that up and, trace over that to give some
So I
sort
think what Mike is asking for, because you're referring to, for lack of a better term, upper part of the pond towards the
Yeah,
bridge.
the eastern.
I think we're looking for a delineation line of where, how many feet from X are you going to excavate to? So that we, don't come back a month later and we
I'd like to mark out the portion of the pond that we're going to excavate.
yes, and then I think, not to interrupt Mike, but a depth, average depth, because I'm sure that the height is different at different times of year.
Yeah.
And then, if I'm hearing Mike correctly, an estimate of how much spoils, and then where it's gonna go and what depth the soil would be spread at.
Right.
Correct?
And then the final thing will be just, what are the erosion controls during excavation? so we don't get downstream siltation. And then the spoil area is the one we stabilize fairly quickly with a C mix or something. But, you know, if you have a flood and it doesn't erode the area that you're depositing all the material on, that could all be downstream.
I read
If you look at the rocks that are in the lake, you can pond, look up the lake, you can see that, the water levels, you know, at least a foot or so lower than it had been into the
Yeah, I
more
think
southern
you
rocks.
mentioned that.
We just don't want to have a pond out and come back later and find out there's a lake.
I'm sorry?
We don't want to have a pond out and come back and find out there's a lake. So that's why we.
Yeah.
Well, no, you're not trying to make it the way it was
Right.
when we got.
want to have an understanding of what we approved. So I think we've given you a pretty good list of what we're looking for, and then would it be fair enough to say you could get that for the next month?
We can sure try. And,
Go ahead.
and is doing nothing an option? I guess that would be another option. Don't do anything, just letting go as it is.
Yeah, you don't need a permit.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
That doesn't involve any coming to this commission. So you can do nothing without any permit.
Do not, yeah, I'm sure I'll do that. But the whole point is when you buy a property, it's a feature. And you know that, and it's a beautiful thing, and many creatures live in it, and you want it to be, as healthy as it was when you came there. And we know that it's gone through this situation before, and our neighbors have told us about it, and they let us know their view.
Well, a lot of times too, in ponds that I've been involved in dredging, not myself individually, but reviewing and approving the permit process in other towns. Sometimes the applicant, on larger ponds, they actually build a small sedimentation pool where the stream comes into the pond, so it's a lot easier to clean out that little sedimentation pool in the future than a bigger pond. Than reappears later. But yours is so small that might not be.
Small, and that's all swamp and bog and wetlands there, so that would be disruptive to that area.
And the other thing is we don't really want a downstream neighbor telling me that the water's all silty and impacting their pond. That's the reason for the erosion controls and making sure that you at least do the best practices when you're doing it. I would think if you kind of Googled pond dredgers, you won't get a list of potential people, and we talk to one or two like, and they would probably do a sketch and do, because they're gonna have to figure out how deep do they have to go to get you to 3 feet, so how much you said that's in there. How wide is it, if it had, an value.
The longer we wait, there's no more material, there's gonna be.
Yeah, to a point.
If you get the information into us, I think we could,
Yeah.
you know, certainly do it in June or July, and we'll be ready to dig maybe in August or September.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I don't see it holding up, it's just getting to know what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
I will make the motion to table, application 25-11 until the next meeting.
I'll second. All in favor? So number 2, 25-14, 15 Sill Lane, Gravity Pond Road, demolition of the existing 3-car garage and multi-purpose rooms and construction of a 32 by 32 close beam garage.
On this one, you guys are at the sidewalk, they indicated there were no wetlands nearby. Looks like there are wetlands within about 30 feet of proposed activity based on our wetlands map. So, based on the email I sent out to you, we've asked them to come in and discuss the application with you. And so I guess they're here to see if we can talk about it.
Yeah.
We'll come forward and get your name with the commission.
So we at the sidewalk moved to have, no jurisdiction because, I thought that the wetlands were down 100 feet. We double checked later on, and we are in fact, about 30 feet from the wetlands. My understanding is just based on the soil content.
Yes, it's swales, yeah.
So, it's alluvial soils, like, if you took that map and, zoomed out, you would see that there's actually entire houses within the same field of alluvial soil on Still Lane. So for me, this is more of a technicality because we didn't vote on anything at the meeting. And no build it, really shouldn't have no build it, so, I don't have any problem with, erosion and sediment controls, that's set forth by the enforcement officer. And I would make a motion to do that, as an approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any exceptions?
I'm gonna abstain just because I didn't see it.
It goes to the front. Now, we did that out just so you have record of that, it will over your, just the key.
Right. Painless, thanks.
Not what I expected, but thank you so much.
Thank you. So we already did number 3, so, number 4 is 308-1 and 304 Mile Creek Road, the mitigation plan submission.
People here for that application?
Yep.
Okay. So you're still here, folks. You guys submitted your materials. Now, like, the commission wants to hear what you just.
For the record, Joseph Thoreau, certified soil scientist. I'm going to have to ask you guys to speak up for me today. I plug my attorneys. Is fair.
Hopefully not today.
Not today, no. So we submitted a mitigation report. Obviously, I understand that you guys have a chance to review it, or
We have extra copies if you need extra copies of certain. So.
Could you just, I think we're probably gonna want to review it a little bit and maybe even visit the site, but you can distribute it out of.
Yeah, again, it's right. I was under the impression that that was emailed out to you folks, but now again, you have several copies. Of these actually look at.
I don't think it was.
You don't think, okay, I apologize. I apologize.
Yeah.
It was a lake, almost.
Okay.
this was sent by email, or?
Yeah, but the way we send large documents is we give provide, links to the actual set of documents themselves, so if you click on the link, see the document. There's some people in, some people didn't, so we have several hard copies for people to this evening. So we'll go over them, here's. Children's. August,
Yeah, there was some. Yeah, they got it. Yeah, it's. Is there a map? Or?
Um,
I believe Joe did a revised site plan.
There was a revised site plan or something, because this.
yeah, let's see what we got here. How do you look at this? But let's see what I got. One copy of this, but then. Yeah, he's like, again. Yeah, shit, it's just like trees. I got to. I never got to here. So
That was like one of the updates for.
okay. This is revised from May 19th, so I think.
Okay.
This is the most recent edition. Let's see if I have another one. It looks like I've got more for you open up down there.
Okay, so I'm just reading this letter from the attorney. They basically don't want to comply with the condition for permit.
That's, well, they're not complying with the order, the permits, the order you issued, that whole bunch of the conditions on it, they are asking you to change some of those conditions, so yes.
Yeah, so I think that needs some significant study,
Well, that's
another
why
visit to the site.
Mr. Crowe is here.
Some of this is just dated the 20th. I mean,
Well, I understand all of that, and again, if we need to go back out to the site, if we need to send this to our own experts, all of the above. This was just, I got this last week, I sent it out as quickly as I could send it out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, people, not everybody saw it. But again, we're just sort of starting this process, and again, Mr. Crowe is here this evening to talk to you about it. And if we need to then go back out and we visit the site, and we need to, again, have our own expert take a look at this, all of the above. But this is, we gave them 60 days to come back with something, and this is what they come back with, okay?
yeah, I would just like to have some additional time to review this. Obviously, the quick review is basically they're trying to waive some of the conditions of the original permit. I want to have a chance to study the plans and visit the site. Now that we have a permit, we don't really have to have a meeting to go out there.
No, it's private property and it's gated, so I'm not gonna have to go out there without some sort of official, approval to do so. I mean, we have the owner right here, I'm not sure.
Well, have you read the regulations? And the state statute? Once there's a permit, okay, we have the right, I mean, we will notify the applicant that we're gonna go out on such and such day, on such and such time, and do compliance with the permit for a continued evaluation. I mean, we're not in the same situation as we were before we issued a permit.
You still have a quorum. But if more than one or two.
Exactly.
Then still a quorum. So
If it turns out that we need to have a forum, then we'd have to schedule a meeting, yes, you know.
I mean,
But we might be able to go out with 2 or 3 people and not have a forum.
my recommendation is that rather than having everyone go out individually and do their own inspection and come back with their own thoughts on this, is to have the commission go out at a specific time. That way everyone is seeing the same thing. That way potentially the applicant could have experts there to give comments. My fear of having everyone going out individually is that you're gonna end up with everyone looking at different things and coming back to different thoughts on different pieces of the record. So I am a little reluctant to send each of you out there individually, particularly since this is a job site that has large heavy equipment going back and forth. So
There's activity on the site now.
I don't know that there is activity on the site, but again, this is.
Hopefully there's no activity on the site now because there's no permit for zoning, right?
There's no permit for anything.
Okay.
Okay.
The neighbors haven't contacted us about activity on the
So they're
site.
sitting in the audience, and I'm guessing if they have comments, they certainly will hear from them. But at this point, again, I have hesitation about sending you out individually on this. Okay? You're the commission, you do what you do is best, but I have hesitation about sending you out individually on this.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what other, I'm open to having whatever the commission decides. I don't know that we need everybody to go out all the time. That was my concern. And especially, I think we should hire someone to help us to answer some of the questions that the conclusion, some of the things that are said in the letter of May 20th, that removing the boulders had a significant impact on the water, because I would disagree with that based on my experience and professional certifications. But, those are the types of things that we should do. Maybe hire someone to look at the site, go out with Eric. I'd like to see, I never got to see a copy of the actual permit. It would be handy for us to see what exactly the conditions say. And the approvals, you can probably just send us that digitally so we can compare our permit and with their request to know exactly what conditions they want to raise. I'm also just looking at the May 19th estimate. Okay, Eric, you can send this.
It was sent out. I mean, it's on the website, it was sent out. Now I happily send it to you all.
Yeah, I missed it. It says prepare rate C areas of relocated berms. I mean, are the berms going to be relocated?
Again, you
There's a
have,
13-page report here that
Okay.
explains every facet of the remediation plan that
Okay.
I think we need to read it and digest it. And I think a lot of your questions will be answered without ever having the stuff put on site. Then you can evaluate whether you feel what's proposed in this mitigation plan is prudent or not. If you'd like, I can go over the highlights. I know you guys are just getting this thrown at you tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it came in on the 20th. Today's the 7th. We are volunteers. We're not in the office. I'm not sure when it will.
I didn't realize, just hit some of the highlights. That's basically without getting too crazy. So, basically, I read the terms of your conditions that we agreed on at the last meeting. And I have some serious environmental concerns with some of those conditions. And I think the best way to address that would be to, kind of find a middle ground. And that's the report that I wrote was in basically an effort to do that. One of the, both Joe, who couldn't be here this evening, the project engineer, and myself, we talked about this at length. And, a couple of things I really have issues with. Number one are the removal of all the boulders. I disagree with you, sir. Removing all of those boulders is definitely a significant impact. It's working directly in the water. It's working in the river. It's going to require having to put siltation booms in there. So, in a quick way, I think the boulders, basically some of the boulders should stay in place. The first section of boulders from where the culverts are, there's like 4 or 5 or 6 large boulders there that are basically holding that roadbed in place. If we remove those boulders, we're going to be creating an unstabilizable, that's the word, condition.
So how did that bed sustain for like the last 50 years?
Yeah,
It eroded into.
Well, it's actually wider than it used to be, so I somehow it did, so I would just.
Yeah, well,
Based on the historic record, I would disagree, but go ahead.
What I'm trying to get at is removing those boulders is going to create a very hard to stabilize situation, because what's going to happen is now we're going to have roadbed right at the edge of the water. And it's going to be a 1-to-1 slope or worse. And what it's going to require, it's not going to be something that can be seeded or even stabilized, because we're going to have water flows continuously beating on that. There's going to be truck traffic driving across. And to me, it's completely foolish to remove those rocks when they're creating a stable roadbed and saving it.
Yeah,
I
I would disagree.
have the floor, please. Can I explain my report? If we remove those boulders, to me, and again, I should discuss it with the project engineer, because I am not an engineer. The only way to stabilize that edge of that roadbed is going to have to be put something right back in. And that's either gonna be jolly blocks, it's gonna be some sort of Versalock wall, or, wire gabions filled with riprap. But there has to be some sort of structure there, in my professional opinion, to keep that safe. So what my idea was to leave those first 4 or 5 rocks in place, because right now we have vegetation established. We've got, it's actually a great condition, better than a jolly block wall. You talk to Connecticut DEP about shoreline work and retaining walls. They want to have natural rock. They want to have rock riprap, with, nooks and crannies for animals to get in and out of habitat. So my idea was to leave those 4 or 5 rocks just as you come across those culverts, leave those in place. There's one area where there's a little bit of erosion happening. We need one more rock there. And then further down, take the rest of those rocks out, because those can be taken out because the topography is flatter there. There's more room. That can be loamed and seeded, New England wet mix or whatever. And that would basically solve the problem without being in the river, without having to do any work, without having to make any, no sediment booms, none of that stuff that would be. My other issue is the removal of the berm. That berm currently right now, or the majority of the berm, does 2 things. Protects the river from any activity that might be going on the site, from traffic, stormwater coming off that road. But it also protects the site from the river. When that river overflows, and if you go out there right now, you're gonna see a big pond full of chocolate milk. Because that river, that last storm, reached where it always reaches, sweeps across the road, and puts sediment into pond 1, which goes into pond number 2, which goes into pond number 3, and then which eventually gets into the river. So my idea was to move the berm. Take down part of the berm, move it over to the edge of the road where the road is now. Extend it all the way up like it is, tie it in at the top where the sediment basin is. And now we have deep berm all the way down. Prevents the river from flooding into the site. That's the site from doing anything into the river. The greater distance, if the berm moves over to the edge of the road instead of where it is, we're going to remediate that, scarify it, plant it, and create more habitat that's not currently there. Those are basically the two big issues that I had. Everything else, as far as establishing other habitats and things like that, the wetland mitigation, that's pretty much all the same. The other thing that I spoke with Joe was the removal of pavement millings. We concurred that the pavement millings do need to be removed where the river floods across the road. When it overtops and goes around those culverts, there's an area that's probably the width of this table here, where those flows go across those millings and go right into the wetlands. We definitely concur that those millings should be taken out of there, but the millings that are up on the hill that stabilize that steep section of slope there, they should be left in place. Mr. Swain explained that, the constant maintenance issue with having to put gravel in there every time it wash out. If you look at the wetlands at the base of that slope, there are no pavement millings. Definitely not along the road shoulders where that slope is. So again, I would rather see those millings stay in place, do a nice crushed stone crossing site with water. If the river does overtop, the water can flow through there. It won't wash, and there won't be any sediments like you find with this bank on ground. So that's basically the meat and potatoes of the wetland mitigation plans. But like I said, I've got a complete report here. I'd like to have you guys go over that, take a look at it, and I can't wrap my head around removing those rocks only to have to put something else back in there. And it doesn't make sense to me. I'd rather avoid the activity in there directly. Granted, they were put in there without a permit. You should have gotten a permit. But taking them out of there is, I think, it's just I can't, I will not write a remediation plan to recommend the removal of those stones. Not only do I have to put something else back in, you're just causing excess service for no reason.
Yeah, I would disagree with you wholeheartedly.
Have you ever seen an excavator work in a river?
I have. Yeah, actually thousands of them.
Yeah.
Okay, over 30 years.
Yeah, so we got current in there, you're gonna pull that, it's gonna be.
Right now, the situation is such that the spacing of the boulders actually encourages additional erosion in between boulders because you don't have any protection of the bank. It creates.
Established vegetation behind them, I've got pictures of it, established vegetation between those boulders, except for one spot, right where the
So
deer.
then you could do some bio remediation.
There's never, this is not gonna go anywhere.
Yeah, I agree.
He's not gonna agree with you, and there's no way you're gonna agree with them.
So we should probably get it. And
It was one thing to interrupt them. You just let me,
I want to.
I think it would make sense for us to go to the commission and visit the site as long as it's acceptable. That way he can point out what he's talking about. We have a better, we'll be able to see exactly what they're requesting and hopefully make some solutions that are gonna work for everybody. Because that's obviously not gonna happen here. So just yell at each other is not gonna get us forward on God. Is there a time that we give everybody enough time to go through the report and then we look at the that's all I want. And then you have to look for you when we work pretty well.
I would like to see something more towards the middle of June. I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to make the June 3rd meeting. But,
Is the 10th too soon?
well,
I'm sure we can read this and
yeah, and look at the plan. We just haven't had that chance to get into the office.
June 10th.
What time is your ten?
I tell you what, it's about 30. You have to trust anything as far as.
I mean, I have to create an agenda for it. It's not a public hearing, so there's no need for. No, I mean, I don't need to put legal notice of it in the paper, but it is a FOIA-able meeting, so I do need to create an agenda, post the agenda, all those things. June 10th is sufficiently far in advance that we're good for that.
We get the table list.
You need to, at this point, continue, so you can table it until you have a sidewalk on June 10th, and then you pick it up again at your next regular meeting.
And then we could discuss whether or not we need to get our own expert looking at stabilization. We might want to engineer.
Yeah, I'm not gonna have you do that
First.
at the sidewalk usually, but yes, I mean, ultimately, you can then pick it up from there, at your next regular meeting as to where you go after you've seen the sidewalk at that point, okay? But sidewalks traditionally don't take votes on things like that, because the public isn't necessarily gonna be, the president's not gonna have a report.
I'll make a motion to table this, so we can have a sidewalk and then.
We'll see what the next regular meeting.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Second, by the way,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vendors,
Alright, so item number 5, 16 Neck Road and 2 Sharon Drive mitigation plan submission.
Yeah, these things.
I know.
Good evening, everybody. Hello. So I just, I hadn't seen this report from Jacobson. Reflecting ponds and what have you for the site. And I also had a chance to speak with Eric regarding the buffer that the strength now what it is. So essentially, which I didn't understand last time, is essentially, he's asking for me to create a 20-foot buffer of vegetation for that acceptable for the wetlands. That would mean me going from the wetlands, disturbing everything, excavating out all the prickle bushes, about 70 feet of everything. It's probably easier if I could show you this little plan there. So I have a silk fence from our entrance road.
And stuff, so people have them.
Yeah, it's just easier to handle that with you guys around. So I have a silk fence from the entrance road all the way across the property. This is the boundary of the wetlands. So at the closest point from lot 2, which we've got a cease and desist order. But from here to the furthest point is 150 feet. From here to the boundary line is 45 feet. So what Eric is saying is create a 20-foot buffer. Apparently here, that means I have to go in, excavate out all the prickers, all the bushes, all the natural stuff that's been there for years. For what?
Buffers are typically just an unknown, a portion that never gets mowed or maintained between the wetlands and clear limits. It doesn't mean you like have to go in and dig it out and.
Well, right now this is solid shrubs and bushes, although they're invasive species, but I didn't put them there. They're natural. That's where they are. Here, there's all sorts of trees and stuff.
No, just clarifying what.
Yeah.
Typically is meant by buffers, it's just a spot that doesn't.
But I have
turn into
this whole section from the silk fence east that has not been touched at all.
Eric, is this an accurate depiction of where the silk fence is?
You guys are out there, at this point,
This is the one that
you guys saw that the silk fence along this area was not in good repair. We were on the other side of the silk fence. This, again, this doesn't show the accurate location of where the house is. The house has moved since this map was drawn and is in a different location. So this does not accurately reflect the conditions on the ground if we were to go out there today. So it's also the issue that, as you guys saw when you were out there, there's huge amounts of erosion going down the road here and flowing into this area of the wetlands. That is also not being addressed by what Mr. Nocito is indicating this evening needs to happen.
But-
So go ahead.
Wasn't there also foliage that was removed?
Yeah, there was foliage removed, and again, one of your conditions on the order that was given to Mr. Nocito was that he provided accurate location of where the foundation is proposed to be located, because there was concern that the location that we saw on the ground did not align properly with the permit that was granted to Sharon. So we needed a new location for that foundation to show where it was in relation to the wetlands, and a new location showing the disturbance that had been created from that foundation to the edge of the wetlands. Because I think, in my recollection, having been out there with you folks relatively recently, is that we are as close as probably 30 feet between the edge of the disturbance and the wetlands at that point, at the nearest point. So at this point, I
Right,
think
which
that,
is why we were talking about a remediation plan, a planting plan to
absolutely, and again, it's all in,
cultivate the buffer that should have been.
again, it's all in what Jacobson is proposing here, and it's again, all in what your orders said a month ago. So again, Mr. Nocito saying first he's seen this report, I understand that, but, I can speak to Mr. Nocito before the meeting. He requested of me the opportunity to come back, I guess, similar to what you just saw in the last application, with his own proposal for what should happen here. That's up to you guys.
prepare a survey of where the house is
Okay,
and where the silk fence is.
But I mean, at this point, I think you need something pretty definitive to try and stop the large amount of erosion that's going on. And then you need something that's pretty definitive as to how to get rid of the silt that is already in that wetland. In talking to the person who was there from Jacobson's office, he told me it would take 2 men with a shovel and a wheelbarrow and gear to get the silt out of the wetlands. He doesn't want it being done mechanically. Because if you get any sort of excavator or whatever in there, you're just gonna tear the crap out of the wetlands and it's never gonna be the same. So again, there's a lot of work to be done. And again, if Mr. Nocito wants the opportunity to come back with his own engineer, that's gonna be up to the commission. But the first thing we need to do is stop the complete injury to the wetlands that's happening now. Again, the silt sacks, as you guys saw, were all overflowing. I don't think that they've been replaced since then.
I have removed them and placed hay bales on the downward slope.
I'm happy to go out there tomorrow and take a look and see what the site looks like right now. You also did the silt fencing around.
That sediment that's in there, that did go in there, I admit. Happened back in 24 when we had those floods in Connecticut. where
But
big
the
dams
silt
were
fencing
breaking.
is remaining down and the hay bales that are in there are growing grass out.
That's,
So I mean, at this
but
point,
they're working.
it is clearly not
There's nothing.
working. I mean, clearly, you can read Mr. Jacobson's report.
Engineer.
Okay, please do. But I mean, the amount of damage to that site through last I saw it a week ago, is to the point where, again, Mr. Jacobson was asking for $100,000 in bonding to get it sorted out. So we're clearly not in a position where everything is okay. And again, if you'd like to come back with your own report, great.
Well, he's got two separate reports here, one for the road, which is, we're still under construction. So if I was to do everything that he wants on this, I couldn't work.
I understand.
He wants seeds, he wants grass, he wants this, he wants that. What how do I build this place?
That's a very good question. And if you want an opportunity to come back with your engineer, by all means, please do so.
And
The reason,
you know, everybody's opinion, there has not been an inch of dirt that has passed this silt. And yet I've got 150 feet here, I got 45 feet here. And what am I supposed to do? Go in and clear out all the brush and plant some,
There's no
stupid
brush
little
there.
plants there?
it's dirt. It's dirt as far as you can see up that hill. It's like
No, no,
one
I'm talking from the silk fence towards to the edge of the, is the
The edge of the silt fence there is down. You've got laying it, at this point, it's down.
It's not. It's not.
The commission saw it. They were out there, they saw it themselves. This is not
I
imaginary.
think what probably needs to be done is you can't post the bond and consider going with the court or getting court order to. Here of the.
Yeah, we'll take that into consideration. Give me a chance to get my engineer out there.
He and engineers are probably that's more of an engineer that interest, you know, can
That's fine.
help you design sedimentation erosion controls very quickly. Because the site's a disaster.
Well, that's your opinion.
Now, it's the opinion of engineers retired, but he's suggesting we post $100,000 bond. If we could actually require that you do that tonight. So it's not our opinion, it's the opinion of an engineer that's very knowledgeable about.
I would like to walk the site with everybody. I thought I had that opportunity.
Well, you didn't show up.
You were there and you weren't.
Well, I thought it was on the 19th,
But
at 5:30.
Okay, well, I'm sorry about that, but that's not our
I'm
fault.
sorry.
The public notice.
I would like that opportunity again to walk the site with everybody. And we can all look at it together.
We're beyond that point right now.
Again, at this point, if you would like the opportunity to have your engineer come back, we can certainly ask the commission for that opportunity. But the order is the order. The order was entered, it wasn't appealed. The order is the order. So we're not going back and undoing that order at the moment. Again, if you'd like the opportunity to come back with your engineer's suggestion, that's great. But we are where we are tonight, and then you sort of have to move forward tonight.
I understand.
So I don't know what more you want the commission to do tonight. I don't know what the commission's thoughts are as to where they want to go with this. You have Jacobson's materials, you have his recommendation for a bond. And here we are, we need to have this report as to what needs to happen pretty urgently on that site, so.
Am I okay to call Jacobson and walk the site with them?
Well, look, yeah, that's gonna get a issue. I mean, at this point, I think he'd rather walk it with an engineer than with you, because I don't think at this point. I think that the suggestions he's going to have are more engineer suggestions than they are.
Okay.
Chief,
That's
okay,
fine.
but let me see who you come up with, let me talk to the commission, if you guys are free to debate it tonight, tell me what you want me to do with it, and we'll go from here however you want.
Well,
I think it would make sense to have, I mean, obviously it's your site, you're free to be there anytime you want, but it would make sense to have Jacobson meet with your engineer at a time that works best for either Jeff.
Okay. So, any other comments, thoughts you guys want to add to the evening here?
What are our options for time?
Well, you have a bond recommendation in front of you, James, so you can ask to have the applicant post that bond tonight. You can have the applicant, you can basically ask the applicant to, adopt any conditions that are set forth in Jacobson's report for tonight. And again, at this point, you can then task the, property owner to come back with an engineer to propose a permanent remediation. Those are the three. Go ahead.
Do we have any bond? We don't have a bond.
We do not have a bond on the site.
Does the planning have a bond?
No, we have no bond because
There's nothing.
there's nothing because this is supposed to be a private road and therefore we weren't going to step in and build it if it didn't go right. So there is no bond at present and now we are asking for a bond, trying to go back and start over and get it like this.
How quickly could the two engineers get together?
I have somebody out there tomorrow.
Because, I mean, that's, none of the controls were maintained on that site that we could find. There were pipes going through hay bales that defeat the purpose of them.
Well, they're flow control.
Well, they weren't maintained. Yeah, they were not maintained, they were not safe. I just think that every day, every rainstorm that comes along, that site gets worse. It just continues, so the faster this can get squared away, the better off everybody is.
Moment I hear from Mr. Lucido as to who his engineer is, I will get them out there together to
So
see.
we can get the two of them together would be the best, in my eyes. Because it's just it's having safe place. Not,
You said you pulled the silt sacks out of the catch basins,
Yes.
so there's none there now.
Well, I mean, all that water goes into our retention pond, which we need to get out. It's not finished yet, so. None of that, excuse me, none of that water flows under the road anymore. Because it doesn't get up high.
I'm gonna probably try and go back and see someone from Jacobson's office to get a sense as to what needs to happen. Yeah, but yeah, if you can give me the name of an engineer, I will get somebody out there with you as soon as we can possibly get somebody out there with you. Again, I don't know what your thoughts are on the bond recommendations this evening. But that's where I would basically say is your next step is to try and get a bond on this side. Okay?
do we do cash bonds?
Yes. It's not, we don't accept the company bonds because company bonds are okay. So you need to give us actual deposit. We put in a account here with, with the applicant's name on it, but it's in our account. Other bonds, yeah, if you recall, you guys released some bonds in your last meeting.
Yeah, that's usually a percentage of the cost.
It's usually 100% of the cost, essentially, yeah. So that's what we're looking at. So that's why Jacobson was suggesting this number, and per his own report, he's saying that's not even enough.
Yeah, and he said it's not enough to do remain.
So, yeah,
Can we read his letters and his reports?
so it's not enough, it's start.
It's a start, and if the permittee works with us to get to the attorney, or his engineer out there, meets with our engineer, and they really get going and cranking on S&E controls, I mean, within a week or so. I would be willing to just get maybe half the bond posted initially. If nothing happens within, we can set a date. Then I would like to see the whole one posted.
If you can give me the opportunity to get our engineer together. With
Well, that's what
Jake,
I'm saying.
then we would,
We would split the bond rather than asking for 100,000, we would ask for 50. And if there's no, if there's no activity, you don't get out there, you don't meet with our engineer, if there's no steps to take to control erosion and so on, then I would suggest that it go to the amount that's recommended by our.
And at this point, why don't you take half between now and the next meeting? By next meeting, if you haven't seen appropriate steps, you're gonna post the other half.
That's adequate for me.
that's a reason.
Okay. And that gives you essentially a month to try and get things
Get
moving
that
on that.
together.
And if we haven't seen progress in a month, then you know what's gonna go turn on after that. Okay? Does that sound like a reasonable proposal?
That's doable for me if it's doable with the other commissioners. I make a motion to require that half the bond recommended by our consultant be posted
I think you need an amount, like,
$50,000. And that if there is substantial compliance with the implementation of erosion controls after two engineers meet before the next meeting. But I'd say, let's go back. If there's no activity between now and the next meeting, then the bond would increase to $100,000.
If I can interject, any posting of any bond right now would probably prevent me from being able to hire an engineer. So if we can wait for, give me 10 days, and then we can talk about the bond. If I
The
don't,
bond would be by the next meeting anyway, so you'd have a month
right, but, okay, so you're proposing
by the next meeting.
by the next meeting, that's fine.
I could live with that. But I think we need a sort of an interim report. If nothing, I don't want to see nothing happening for weeks.
Oh, yeah. I will be watching.
If it's satisfactory activities happen before the next meeting, it's 50. If nothing's happened, that'll work through.
Yeah, and Eric needs to really give us, I don't want it sitting there for another month.
No,
We're in the
absolutely.
same
I don't want it sitting there another month
situation.
either. I will definitely be giving you guys, internal reports on this the moment I have. it. Again, it's obviously a very high profile site. It's also very close to the town hall. It's easy for me to get to. So, I will be out there regularly just seeing what's going on. In fact, I plan to go out there tomorrow. I'll just take a look at what's going on the road, so.
but we just want to promote that motion that it's, we're going to postpone any bonds until the next meeting.
Well, the bond should be posted prior to the next meeting, okay? I think that what he's saying is he can send out 10 days to look at this, great. But I think by the time you guys meet again in June, he needs to have posted $50,000 bond.
Well, we have a site visit on June 10th, which is what, 13, almost 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, you're not taking motions on the
I know.
bonds of the sidewalk, so.
But you could tell us that nothing has happened.
Well, you'll be obvious on June 10th. You'll be able to see for yourself, and then it's happened by then. But yeah, I will certainly be updating between now and then as to what's going on. And at that point in time, you can decide where you want to go. But I mean, ultimately,
Well, June 10th, we're going to another side. We're not going to this side,
no, not, you're going to the, oh, you're right.
going to throw it 308.
So that's true. I apologize. My side screwed up here. I can certainly give you information on that night as to where we are as far as a brief update, even though it's not going to be on the agenda. It's just an informal update by then. But again, I plan to, in writing, give you updates between now and the next week.
So my understanding is
Well,
the bond will go into effect.
well, that's up to them. They haven't
by
done
the next
motion yet, so.
If nothing's been done.
So either way, it's the motion has been paid yet, but if I'm understanding where it's going, if you've put forth a good effort before the next meeting, the bond would be 50. if nothing's happened, that should be. recommended.
So you're raising on the block.
But it would be, and the deadline would be before the next meeting, not before the sidewalk on the village.
Okay.
Yeah. 50,000 before the next meeting.
Correct.
Yes.
Do you want to?
Is there someone want to make a motion on this to?
Well, that is a motion. I think Mike's already has, he can amend it.
I don't. Exactly.
I wanted to just, that, like, why don't you just that we impose a $50,000 bond prior to the next meeting.
Yes, and we will get a report on the 10th as to whether or not there's been any activity.
Yes.
And then we can take this out, but you for a further bonding at the next meeting.
Yes.
Correct.
All right, I will second that.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining?
Thank you. Last thing is you have 4 sets of minutes to approve here. I have copies of the minutes if you need them. But I don't know if you want to take them individually, since I don't know what was in each one, or if you either want to handle it, but again, I've got copies of the minutes.
Everybody needs to take one of them before we make the motion. So the reading approval of minutes, for regular meeting, April 22nd, 2025.
The only one absent was Gary, so.
If anybody want to propose changes?
Motion, I make a, motion, what was it,
To approve the minutes.
22nd? Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Special site meeting walk, April 29th, 2025.
So, move to approve.
I missed that one.
So Scott and Tom were absent.
Michael's made the motion. I need somebody else.
I'll second.
Me.
All in favor?
Aye.
Special meeting on the 29th of April, I move with minutes to be approved.
So again, Scott and Tom.
Vote in favor.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I can't make the motion on that.
And a special meeting sidewalk, May 19th, 2025.
I'll make a motion to approve Monday, May 19th. Special meeting sidewalk.
All in favor?
Aye.
What it is take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to approve adjourn at 7:07.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.